Vietnam War. Hundreds of thousands of U.S. soldiers had been sent to an unruly, faraway place, many of them to die. The newspapers of the day did their duty covering the war, but was the American public fully informed? This is a story of a CUNY graduate who became a Pulitzer Prize winner, who, as editor-in-chief of the New York Times, oversaw publication of the Pentagon Papers, a choice that ultimately helped secure freedom of the press in the United States for decades to come. In 1969, Abraham Michael Rosenthal was installed as the executive editor of the New York Times. Rosenthal had climbed the editorial hierarchy of the Times, rising from a campus reporter in 1943 to the top position more than 20 years later. The Vietnam War was raging, and the country was filled with war protesters spurred on by pictures, articles, and television footage of dead American soldiers, scorched villages, and innocent Vietnamese civilians being traumatized by the war. It was against this backdrop that the Times was gifted a trove of classified documents called the Report of the Office of the Secretary of Defense Vietnam Task Force. These were secret documents that the Defense Secretary of the time, Robert McNamara, had commissioned to outline the long history of the Vietnam conflict. An advisor to McNamara, Daniel Ellsberg, who had grown deeply disillusioned with the war effort, leaked the documents to Times Vietnam correspondent Neil Sheehan. As editor-in-chief, Rosenthal set up a small team in a New York Hilton Midtown hotel room to read through these documents, and he was astounded by what he saw. In 1986, he recounted,
"When this pile of documents came to us, and we understood after a while what it was, we were looking at the secret political war, political actions, and diplomatic actions of the United States."
The Pentagon Papers, as they came to be called, detailed blunders, missteps, and the expansion of the war that the U.S. government had not shared with Americans. The revelations would be a serious blow to the administrations that had overseen the conflict. Rosenthal brought it to the attention of the Times publisher, Arthur Sulzberger, and at first, the Times law firm advised against publishing. But in-house lawyer James Goodale prevailed by insisting on the First Amendment right, that the press had the freedom to print material about the government in the service of the people. On June 13, 1971, the first of 3 installments was published. President Nixon immediately went to war against the Times.
Times said, "There's 3 statements that we're up against them. It's Henry Sage's conspiracy about, what do you think? It's absolutely clear. Look at their unempathy, but that many in it. Made up shit, it's a vicious war. Right, sure, we're all against it. God damn. And if they're gonna go to this way, we're gonna fight everything we got. We just takes the chance."
The Department of Justice, under Nixon's directive, issued a temporary restraining order against further publication. But the Times and the Washington Post fought back in a case called New York Times v. U.S. Government that went to the Supreme Court. The court ruled 6-3 that the Times and other outlets, in the interests of public awareness, could continue to publish these papers. A.M. Rosenthal was a decisive force in the decision to publish the Pentagon Papers. It remains one of the most significant court cases in U.S. law related to freedom of the press, cementing the press's ability to expose governments. But Rosenthal rose to the pinnacle of U.S. journalism from a most humble beginning. Abraham Michael Rosenthal was born in 1922 in Sault Ste. Marie, Canada, the son of a Russian immigrant. In his early years, his father, a house painter, snuck across the U.S. border, eventually settling in the Bronx. Abraham had osteomyelitis in his legs that forced him to drop out of high school and become a charity case in a Minnesota hospital where he eventually healed. Eager to pursue a degree, Rosenthal enrolled for free at City College. Soon after, he began to write for the student paper, The Campus. He later recounted, "City College is important to generations of New Yorkers. It gave us a chance to grasp what we could never otherwise attain, life work that fulfilled our desires and capacities. The tuition then was free, which was only a little more than I could afford. A few years later, while still at City College, he landed a $12 a week job in 1943 as a campus stringer for the New York Times. He switched to night classes to finish his degree in 1949. After covering campuses for the paper, he was asked to be a foreign correspondent. He was first assigned to New Delhi and reported all around the region, including Tibet. These early assignments embedded in Rosenthal a firm belief in freedom that would later inform his Pentagon Papers decision. Afterwards, he covered the United Nations, Japan, and Poland. In Poland, as foreign correspondent for the Times, he wrote about the communist regime and its leader, Władysław Gomulka, in such terms that he was expelled from the country after 2 years. The Polish government said in his expulsion order, "You have written very deeply and in detail about the internal situation, party, and leadership matters. The Polish government cannot tolerate such probing reporting." In 1960, A.M. Rosenthal won the Pulitzer Prize for his international reporting. The committee cited those sentences when Rosenthal was awarded the prize. In 1963, he moved on to an editorial role. He earned a reputation for being a hard-nosed editor with high expectations. Some felt him intimidating and unfair, but many of his supporters felt his expectations were necessary for a paper like the New York Times.
The Times is like a house. You can add a room or add a little floor or a little section, but it's got a foundation where you have a group of men and women that will have a shared idea of what the Times ought to be. Otherwise, it'd be a different paper every day.
Over the next 23 years, he overhauled the Times for a new era. The paper on newsstands and the internet today would not exist in its current form without his oversight.
We are one of the last, or maybe the last, large news gathering paper in the world. But we really want to print our own news. We have people all over the world. I don't think there's a foreign staff like the Times. I don't think there's a national staff like it.
He introduced multiple sections, Metro, Business, and innovated the Sunday paper with new sections and initiatives. He also initiated a national edition. Advertising boomed, and the paper, once on shaky financial footing, prospered. After he was forced to retire at the mandatory age of 65, he became a columnist for the Times, writing on topics ranging from the Middle East, international affairs, and national politics. But it might be his elevation of the standards of journalism that Rosenthal will be most remembered for. "Keep the paper straight" is written on his gravestone, and his epitaph speaks to his editorial rule to stay as neutral as possible in writing and reporting. And although he may have butted heads with staff over the years, he was called brilliant, but also abrasive. The Times remains one of the most respected newspapers, in no small part due to his influence.
I know if the Times ever were to cease, God forbid, you could not recreate it, because now it's built around the lifetime. So a lot of people, reporters, art critics, editors, people come from all over, and they become part of the Times. And if this Time disappeared, this whole treasury of people also disappeared. You couldn't find these people again.